Number 1. It's winter, and Toby's new newsletter has arrived, revealing new info on the upcoming chapter and, as an extra gift, several details about chapters 3 and 4 that came out in 2025. So today, it's time to look at every detail of this winter data, starting with the return of Tenna, who reappears at the top of the newsletter, delivering a Christmas gift, wearing a Santa hat. The funny thing is, this is the same sprite he uses when spraying Spamton, showing he wasn't that far off from showing his kind side to the salesman. Number 2. The image comes with a short text, "Cold water falls from the top of the sky. It's unavoidable, but eventually spring will show up." This is interesting because chapter 5 seems to be set during a Christmas festival in Hometown, with decorations in the style previously shared in past newsletters. This could be a teaser that summer will arrive after this chapter, or simply a reminder that bad times eventually go away. Number 3. And just like in the last newsletter, the message came with a video, teasing what awaits us inside Castle Town in chapter 5, although it specifies that this snippet, like many we'll see later, has nothing to do with winter. It also warns that this is a spoiler for those who haven't completed chapters 3 and 4 yet, so you've been warned. For those who didn't catch the previous snippet, it's an optional sequence involving the Mike imposters revolving around the green Pippen drinking battery acid, which hurts him, but the Zapper claims his theory is that since he's green, he looks good drinking something green. The Pippen replies that that isn't a theory, questioning whether something looking cool makes it right, something the Zapper finds logical, and unable to question his logic, he accepts it and keeps drinking the acid. Number 4. This time, not everyone will be able to access this new snippet. According to Toby, we need to have Tenna in Castle Town to trigger it. If he's lost in chapter 3 or taken to nobody in chapter 4, we won't be able to see this sequence. It starts with the Mike imposters thinking Tenna is approaching, putting on their costumes incorrectly except for Cat Mike, who seems to really like his look and keeps his form. But when they realize it's Chris arriving, they drop the disguise. When the green Pippen questions Cat Mike for not taking off the costume, he asks for his name. And with the melodic sounds of the Shadow Guys, he says his name is Pluie, the name of the cat minigame. The Pippen points that out, insisting that he is Mike. Number 5. But everything is interrupted by the arrival of Tenna, who is looking for a massage. The Zapper and Pluie flee the room, leaving the Pippen in front of a Tenna who expects to see Mike, specifically his Pluie version. The Pippen insists that's not his name, but Tenna claims to know Mike better than anyone, and knows that sometimes he's a cute little Pluie, forcing him to bring him out if he doesn't want his contract hardened. So he leaves the room and returns as Small Mike, disappointing Tenna for not arriving in his Pluie version. But he asks for a massage anyway, telling him to hop on his back. But Small Mike refuses and tells him he won't do anything for him anymore. Tenna laughs, but Mike tells him he won't do it as long as he treats the people working for him like disposable trash. He claims he doesn't do that and always adds little bonuses to his contracts, like paid fruit-flavored vacation, leftover globy slime. Number 6. But then he claims Mike told him how bad he felt about the contract. And this is the most interesting part. Tenna speaks indirectly about Spamton. Mike told him that he shouldn't sign it, that he couldn't, and if he did, something terrible would happen. And although Tenna was warned, he made him sign the contract anyway, revealing his need to be big more than anyone, wondering how it could be his fault that Spamton decided to run far away from him, claiming that he could have helped him, that they could have been big together, deducing that Mike cared a lot about Spamton too. And that's why, since that incident, he feels like he's not really here, claiming that everything is fake. When the curtain falls, it all seems pretended, confirming once again that the Mike that Spamton and Tenna knew disappeared the moment Spamton received that call that filled him with fear and made him abandon everything. Number 7. This makes the Pippen sad, who resumes his role as Small Mike and just asks to see the vacation section in the contract. Tenna tells him he'll add it right away, along with the slime, claiming he can never forget the slime with a sad face. Then Small Mike leaves to get more Pluie, and Tenna rejoices, leaving him alone with Chris, telling them that the size of Mike's butt varies a lot lately, asking them to keep an eye on it for him. It seems the reference to the slime has to do with his introductory sequence where we see blue slime turn into a Pippus, while green slime falls from above, making it clear that this hides a huge trauma for Tenna. Number 8. After this little teaser, we have a whole section on the status of Chapter 5, and progress is going excellently, citing a post he made on Blue Sky on December 1st, where he assured that just the following week, the translation process would begin, extracting all the English text, leaving a small example of a couple of lines of dialogue along with contextual notes, which seems to speak of the way of the worm, and some makeup it will have, something shown to us at the start of this section with a sprite of a worm wearing makeup. Number 9. And 4 days later, on December 5th, he updated saying that he finished annotating most of the translation with the help of 8.4. Although he remarks that he skipped a couple of unfinished parts, what they did was enough for the translator to start their work on Monday, December 8th. This indicates that not all of Chapter 5 is completely finished, but only a couple more sequences are left to wrap up, making it clear that we will definitely get this chapter in 2026. Number 10. But it's not enough for the translation to be finished. Once it's ready, testing will begin with a team professionally dedicated to this task, which will allow them to analyze how the game runs on consoles. A stage scheduled to start in January, realistically confirming that it will still take several months to launch the game from its current state, but the years-long wait for a new chapter seemed to remain in the past. Number 11. Toby sharing how crazy it feels to say that just 6 months ago, only chapters 1 and 2 existed, and in a few more months, most of the team will be focusing their attention on chapter 6, confirming that the game won't stop and the streak of chapters will remain consistent. Number 12. And to finish the chapter 5 status, he assures that all the rooms in the game are more or less finished, except for some details in the background. Almost all the scenes in the game are complete, with a few needing a visual touch-up. And most importantly, the majority of the game's battles are finished except for a couple, functioning from start to finish, but they still need adjustments in their pacing and bullet patterns to be considered finished, assuring that this chapter contains hours of fun. Number 13. At the end of the section, we have another animated sprite of a couple of smiling shadow guys, hugging and jumping, and since most of the teasers seem to take place in Castletown, it seems that visiting it this time will have many more interactions than before. Mind you, only if we decide to recruit them and not use violence to scare them off. Number 14. And as a final treat for Chapter 5, Toby leaves us a new song called Shop 3. He assures that most of the merchants remaining in the game use this music, besides being the only song on the soundtrack that doesn't spoil anything, confirming that most will have very characteristic leitmotifs, with Shop 3 having the characteristic leitmotif of Hip Shop. But I'll leave the song here for a moment so you can judge it yourselves. Number 15. And although the Chapter 5 teasers are over, the great Tobias Fox has given a gift to all fans, even though they have nothing to do with winter. Since 6 months have passed since the premiere of Chapters 3 and 4, he brings us a look at the chapters with BTS data and thoughts on the creation process for all of them, showing very shocking data. Plus, he also gives us a new modified Tenna sprite, giving another gift, specifically the sprite he uses for his attacks. Number 16. It starts by showing us concept art by GGDG of TV City, with cars with TV antennas and a Tenna presented on a large television screen, with the buildings looking more like display cases than anything else, and even a subway to travel through the city. Toby recounts how the idea for this world began, just like the other chapters, in 2016. The idea was simple. As a break from the regular formula, let's have a crazy board game like Mario Party. Let's have a TV character who will be like Mettaton. And since the classic game Ghost Trick was still very present in his memory, and he loved its 3D, his goal was to create a 3D TV character with the same appeal, recounting that he bought a Kinect to try to do motion capture and combine it with Miku Miku Dance to create a 3D TV character with a crazy dance inspired by Mr. TV Dinner. Number 17. The music for TV World was composed way back in 2015, using the Mettaton battle theme file as a base, and before it came out, he he modified the theme to add the hip shop and green room leitmotifs. Curiously, during 2018, he started composing a completely new concept, using leitmotifs from the chapter's compositions, but since his French reaction when testing wasn't very consistent, he returned to the original composition. But if you feel like hearing it, Toby shared it under the title TV Land, adding a note that it's not finished and we shouldn't take it seriously, but it's always a joy to hear another arrangement from good old Toby. Number 18. The first sketches of Tenna were born in 2017. Before this point, his name was Mr. TV Guy. The first sketch presents him with 4 arms, and a note stating that he can change his size, and when people get mad at him, he shrinks to the size of an insect, which could explain his extra arms. He also sips nectar with his nose, and when he's very happy, his nose ends up turning into a flower. We also see his first colors, being very similar to the final version, as well as some notes devising how he would move with his 3D look, giving examples of his poses and the way each frame would move. Number 19. The next sketch shows him in a static pose, somewhat hunched over and moving his arms slightly, as well as the change in his head to static, shaking it to switch to a different screen. Finally, his injured poses tease that Toby was already preparing his finale, losing his arms, as well as devising his attack poses, which surprisingly ended up in the game without major changes. Number 20. He reveals that initially, he asked Canatines to make him in 3D, the same person who created the original designs for Lancer, Rudin, Hathy, Clover, and Spade King. Although it seems the file for this model was lost, GGDG drew Tenna from various angles and many of Tenna's key poses, which helped as a base for the 3D model that Pixelated Crown ended up making. Number 21. The word art was created by Audrey Weiner and animated by Everdrad, but the idea of having Tenna speak with word art was inspired by P.T. Bridgeport from the Pogo comic. One of GG's illustrations shows that the TV theme was going to be more pronounced, with palm trees, bushes, and even lakes with literally TV antennas. The pyramids would be TVs buried in this shape, and a castle with a chef's hat, probably for the food minigame. Number 22. Another of GG's illustrations presents the map of the islands, where there were animals like turtles with TV screen chest, as well as crabs with a large screen eye. The sea rocks would resemble living room sofas. In addition to the protagonist's ship, there would be a sort of vessel with sails featuring Tenna's face on them, and even a whale playing with a beach ball. And something that would have been interesting to see is Remote Island, a name Susie doesn't seem to like very much, but basically it's a remote control of Tenna's with a sort of Coliseum on it, plus a channel surfing, where we would see Tenna in a swimsuit surfing the waves, something Susie doesn't seem to like either. Number 23. Making the graphics for these maps was something that took time but didn't represent a huge obstacle, with conceptual illustrations by GG showing the first boards, similar to those in Mario Party, and curiously, proofs of this early conceptual idea can still be found in the game files. Number 24. However, the real obstacle of the chapter was the gameplay. Toby's idea was for the boards to be like Mario Party or Black Space from Gunstar Heroes, but since this took away exploration and was inefficient, he changed the style to that of Super Mario Bros. 3, with many Zelda-style minimaps, combining them all into one big map. Number 25. But what delayed the process of this chapter the most were the minigames. Toby admits to having vastly underestimated the effort and direction required. Although the final result was quite fun, he claims they wouldn't have put in so much effort if he had known how challenging and slow they would be. So a large part of this chapter's development time was dedicated to the minigames. Number 26. Because the chapter was composed of many different parts, all created independently, one of the hardest tasks was determining the pacing until almost everything was assembled. Originally, the chapter structure was Board 1, Desert Board, Cooking Game, Board 2, Island Board, Rhythm Game, Board 3, City Board, Susiezilla and Cowboy, Board 4, Tenna controls the game, TV World. Before making the games, Toby thought they would be very quick experiences, and only the City Board would be larger, with a mini game in each half of the city. Completing both games allowed going to the television tower, triggering a sequence that would lead to board 4. Number 27. If you noticed, in this structure there was no S room, which emerged after programming most of the game, adding the green room and S rank room after each board. In addition to making board 3 reformulated to make it intentionally shorter, and by this point the cowboy game was no longer present. Number 28. True fans know that board 3 was created and is accessible in the game files, but what we didn't know is where a series of zones in the files that didn't make it to the final game fit in until these data revealed by Toby. It turns out that because they intentionally made this board shorter, he added a zone in TV World between each half of board 3, in the backstage area. A zone made of wood with a stealth mechanic and where the battle with Rule's card took place. Number 29. He also confirms that after defeating Rule's card, you obtained Elnina's controller. Her ability, Crying Buckets, which allowed accessing the key card that lets you skip the rest of board 3. However, even though the backstage was an attempted breath of fresh air, the game had become very heavy with that structure. When Toby's friends played this version, everyone started getting tired after board 2, so they absolutely had to shorten it. Number 30. That's how we got the final version that we can all play in the game, eliminating board 3, leaving it available only for the sword route. The Suzyzilla game became optional, and the fun parts of the backstage were incorporated into sections of TV World. Toby ends this section with a reflection. Some people are of the opinion that having more things is always better, but when you think of the entire game with all its chapters as an overall experience, you really don't want any chapter to bog it all down. And Toby assumed the chapter was going to be quite divisive, with up to 50% of players hating it. Fortunately, his changes made most enjoy it, something he was relieved to see, and he's glad someone likes this, although there are some critics who hate this chapter. Number 31. On the other hand, chapter 1 was much easier to make, and he shares some concept arts of the sanctuaries, with much more surreal stairs, stained glass windows with a very peculiar version of the Deltarune, resembling an angel, and most curiously, a couple of banners with an eye on them, indicating that the Titans might be a vital part of the prophecy, plus a hallway with stained glass windows that seem dedicated to the human souls with different shades. And although the final version has a more complex shape, we wonder what the idea was when conceptualizing this section of the sanctuaries. Number 32. Another couple of concept arts dedicated to Gerson. First we see his library, which is much smaller than the final version, with a small fireplace, a sort of chest, and a round table with a teapot and the sheet with the message he sent to his son Alvin, plus outfit variants, from the one that remained finally with color variations and a couple of times with gloves, to a more relaxed version, with a Sherlock Holmes style pipe, proving that any outfit looks good on him. Number 33. But the concept art that stands out above all is that of the Titan, charcoal versions that give us a better look at the details of its hand, to full perspectives of its being cracking the ground, emerging wrapped in black wings, with the glow of its face shining much more than a save point, eyes covering its whole chest and fragments of darkness coming out of its arms, to full versions with its body completely covered by wings, darkness surrounding it, and a small focus on the view of its face being the most similar to the final version. Number 34. Although it was easier than Chapter 3, it had its difficulties. One of them had to do with the climbing mechanic. At first, it used normal overworld movement, changing the graphics to simulate climbing, but the result was somewhat confusing. So Toby himself reprogrammed a new climbing system, being one of the few things he was able to program for the game. Number 35. Another big change is that initially the Dark Sanctuaries were going to be a giant non-linear dungeon, meaning we could go wherever we wanted in whatever order we felt like, Zelda style. But this made creating the game's narrative events difficult, causing Gerson's appearance to feel weak. So the structure was modified to be linear, like everything else, something that was definitely worth it, because the old man is the best part of the chapter. Number 36. But the most annoying part to make was the Holiday House section. Since it was a new and unique mechanic, Toby wanted playing it not to feel like a waste. The original idea was to set up a Rube Goldberg machine, you know, those that have a super complex mechanism to perform a very simple task. One of the ideas was to launch a treat with a machine straight into the bathroom, which would attract a hungry Asgore, making him sit between Noelle and Suzy. But since it didn't work very well, they tried installing a toy train that could travel through the whole house and do puzzles around it, something data miners found in the game, and part of the mechanism can be tested by accessing these test scenarios. Number 37. The section was having so many problems that Toby ended up asking his friend Andrew Hussey, creator of the Homestuck webcomic, for help thinking of ideas. Sharing his ideas, like having a bust of Macaulay Culkin screaming in his classic Home Alone pose, although he suggests putting another character from the game, like Papyrus. But the puzzle would consist of reuniting the two hands with the torso, which would be separate pieces found in different parts of the house, making the bust fall and break things constantly until completed. The reason for its constant falling is because Asgore cleans the bathroom and goes on to scrub the shower, making it necessary to move the curtain to see him, showing how he struggles to stay on the slippery floor that constantly knocks him down, shaking the whole house, causing the bust to fall and start rolling like an uncontrolled bowling ball, destroying everything needed to solve the puzzle. An interesting idea, but in the end, Toby realized it was best to focus only on the story and atmosphere, so he finally redid everything in its final version, which turned out great. Number 38. Then Toby shares a couple of concept arts made by himself. The first is an early version of a Darkener made from a fire extinguisher. Small, with glasses, little hair, beard and mustache, a pair of hands, and 2 little feet. Very different from the final version, which looks more like a legless chicken, with a vest, keeping only his beard from the original design. Number 39. Then he gave us a concept art of what seems to end up being Billbox, who would look more like a shelf with a book for a head. The original idea was for his head to be a flip book that would show every emotion he felt. For example, when happy, the image of a smiling sun would come out. He could blink and would be a fan of bookmarks. Number 40. And finally, he shares the original choreography of Torio and Sans dancing, showing that most of the jitterbug steps were already prepared since then, to the point where Torio falls to the floor laughing, from so much laughter caused by Sans. Number 41. Hammer of Justice is another song he started composing in early 2016. Toby considers that the final arrangement ended up being very good, but since he didn't create it for 7 years, the piano sketch is the main version he remembers, and it is just as good as the final version that gave us one of the hardest battles in the chapter. Number 42. To finish the retrospective of Chapter 3 and 4, Toby gives us clearer credits of the team and what they participated in. Since Chapter 2, we saw the work of Sarah, who was in charge of most cutscenes. She implemented localization, console patches, participated in testing and organization, besides being in charge of redoing the Noel house sequence 3 times. Occasionally, she creates comics for journals and likes to grow crops in her own garden. Working on the snack tray scene made her want to eat. Fred programmed the Chapter 3 boards and most of the exterior rooms in Chapter 4. He loves tacos and has a game called Love. Taxi assembled the rhythm game, along with other complex visual sequences, like the Titan's Fall with Susie, besides being in charge of attacks, and created a project called Moment to Midnight. Temmie drew basically everything and is obsessed with baking, while Toby did something. Number 43. But there were also new members of the team who arrived in Chapter 3. Alex programmed many of the bullet patterns and handled the programming for Suziezilla. He created all the Titan attacks as well as the spinning attack and the final attacks of the Roaring Knight. Pure Question also handled bullet patterns, including Jackenstein's attacks and most of the usual enemies. Alex and Pure Question created a game called Star Providence in the shoot-'em-up genre. Number 44. Those who arrived in Chapter 4 or Angel, who was in charge of the Titan Tower and some exterior rooms of Chapter 4, besides being in charge of all the exclusive content for Switch 2. Currently, he's the lead programmer for the Chapter 5 Overworld, and it seems he really liked the play sequence because it was his favorite part of development. Juiced handled the mosaic and gathered visual and background details for Chapter 4 and also 5. Sarah J.S. performed various visual effects and complex programming tasks like lighting, waves, and prophecies, and for 5 she's handling the cutscenes. Andy created the 3 mics and handled the Jongler and Batat games. Now he's working on things that not even he knows what they are. He recounts that he had to move his workspace to another room because he was screaming too much into the microphone for the Batat minigame. If you want more from him, you can check out his game Knuckle Sandwich. Number 45. Who also joined for this chapter was Robert. a producer who has a weakness for older Japanese men and history. Although he isn't involved in the main development process, he works on team organization, task management, and editorial guidance. Toby claims he could be a frog, and who knows? So maybe he's similar to Frogget or Ribic. Number 46. Toby ends this section talking about some guests who participated in the game with some contributions, like Andy, who helped in the cooking minigame, besides creating important objects for Chapter 5. You might know him for his game Trespassers and others. James helped in the cowboy minigame, besides creating the tornado vortex where everyone spins at once in Act 1. And as a final mystery, the collaboration of someone unrevealed who programmed the bullets for a Chapter 5 boss, possibly another great shooter video game author who we'll be surprised to meet, but we'll have to wait until Chapter 5 to find out. Number 47. Returning to the latest news in the newsletter, Toby presents an official collaboration between Square Enix and Undertale, showing us a couple of cool t-shirts, with Sand sleeping on a chocobo that doesn't look very happy with his way of writing, and another of the annoying dog eating a bone on top of Emil from Nier Automata, whom the game developer also uses as an avatar to represent himself. Number 48. Along with this came the piano album, Echoes Beneath, which many talented artists from Square Enix collaborated to create and interpret classic Undertale themes. Yoko Shimomura, composer of Kingdom Hearts, Live Alive, Super Mario RPG, and many more, was the producer, and even arranged Megalovania, something that even makes Toby blush and crumble little by little due to the great honor of having someone of her stature work on his arrangements. Number 49. He also reminds us that this winter, Deltarune has the first discount in its history, with a 20% price cut on Steam. Although, I suppose everyone already has the game, but don't be alarmed. This discount is coming to consoles too, so if you want to get hold of the Switch version, which is the most expensive of all platforms, take advantage of this huge deal. Accompanied by this announcement, we have a couple of shadow guys celebrating, with one waving a sort of green handkerchief. Number 50. And as a conclusion, Toby closes by confirming that Chapter 5 is already very advanced, and wishes us a happy 2026, which of course it will be if it's another year with a new Deltarune chapter. Besides adding a sprite of Queen moving with a style very similar to Tenna's, with a sports headband. So she might be exercising together with Tenna in one of those classic TV Pilates programs.